Great, great, great. So my session is about setting up a CMG in 25 minutes. 5 minutes faster than the guy from Ireland. Yeah, I can do it in 10, but I usually phone up Jerry, who gives me a hand, points out the idiots. Yeah, points out the idiocy that I either talk too loud or Emmanuel is. How about now? Yeah, just sounded a bit echoey. Great, yeah, I hope that got a bit of a gas giggle. I've not used this before. Traditional button pushing. So I thought I would push out and try something new today. I've never done anything like this. This is visionary. There's no technical content in here whatsoever. In fact, you could just mute yourselves right now, switch off, grab an hour's sleep, wake up in the last couple of minutes and probably get the whole soundbite. But what I want to do today is I want to step away from the trenches, and I've been doing this for such a long time. I enjoy presenting on features, products and such things, and been doing it for quite a few years. And I noticed something going on around me, and ever observant, I thought, well, I wonder if anybody else notices what's going on. So this session is going to be about the paradigm change, the paradigm shift that's taken place in the entire IT industry due to cloud technologies. If we step back and stop observing all the individual atomic detail, this feature's going from left to right, this new feature's coming in, this new product, Windows 10, and it can be modern managed. All this is technical, it's great. But what's happening in the industry? What's really happening to the fabric of the industry with all this cloud technology coming in? It seems to me to be two worlds butting up against each other. You've got your classic world, retro, legacy, which is still modern. And then you've got modern, the new cloud world. Microsoft want you to be in the cloud. For all practicality's sake, you can't actually go there. Not all of you all at once. You can't just, like we were saying earlier on, binary switch over. There's a lot of planning, a lot of prep work. So how to actually get on top of this and understand what's going on. So just a quick introduction for myself. I like archery, just taking it up. Does anybody else like archery? Ah, cool. Maybe you could chat with me after. I've only just taken it up. That's my first bow down there. I have a lot of fun. There's a few other bits and pieces on there just for anecdotal jokes. Don't really need to read it out. So, how to step back and observe the big picture. As I say down there, to plan for the future, you need to have an idea of what's ahead, what you're doing now, so that you can have a jolly good guess at what's going to come in the future. Let me just read out my notes. I made loads of notes here, but as usual, they're great as I'm typing them down, but not really great for reading out. If anything, they're there for the deck to be read offline. So are you ready? I thought it was funny. Right, it's all about identity services. Well, I think that is a bit of an understatement, really. It's about the user account identity and where that lives. And today we have a thing called Azure. We have Active Directory. That's where all our bread is. That's where all the skin is in the game. If you're going to create a new user, you create in AD. You would create a new user in Azure AD. How do you say it? Azure. How's the Microsoft way of saying it? I could, yeah. So you create a new user in Azure, and they're a bit disconnected from your existing intranet infrastructure. There might be a few problems with authentication on the local intranet services and such like because they're dependent on AD users. If you create a user in Azure, it's never coming back to AD. So your source of authority has to be where? Does anyone want to hazard a guess what your source of authority would be? What's authoritative? Is your Active Directory. So your SOA today is Active Directory. That's which is doing all of the authentication, really. Well, all the original new objects. So when you author, it's coming out of AD, heading to Azure. Per just showed you some examples there where you needed a cloud user. So you'd need an Azure AD user for that modern stuff to actually fully work. If you had an AD user, it wouldn't work. So we have two worlds that we have to live in right now. We're going to be creating new users and new objects in AAD and in AD. But our source of authority will always remain as AD, because that's doing the replications up to AAD. Is that easily followed? So we need to do a little bit of switcheroo. We need to switch from AD to AAD. And that requires a little bit of planning and forethought on what's going on, and identifying the blockers and the problems that will stop you getting there. So the first things that would stop you getting there is the fact that if you authored any new content in Azure AD, it's not getting to your AD. So all your on-prem on-prem services are going to be expecting to look at Active Directory for authentication or for LDAPs across the global catalog and such things like that. So create in Azure, and you're not going to see an Active Directory. So things need to change around a little bit, and we're not there yet. So which one currently means the most to you? And that's a question to the audience, because 100% of you right now could be traditionalist on-prem people, or you could be working at a small organization that's got purely a cloud footprint, no Active Directory. So anybody in that kind of camp? Anybody running with pure AD, Azure AD? Yeah, just the Microsoft guy, which is kind of revealing, isn't it? Not in a negative, but actually where we are with things. You're an MSP that sells a special niche product, but yeah, you're special. Get out of it. Ignore that. No, but yeah. You get the mic for him. That's a small amount of users.
That's a small company that has gone to the cloud over 1.5 years.
Yeah.
So I would guess how long it will take for a big company.
Yeah. That's quite a lot of shift for a corporate, one of the big verticals to make. But you can do it piecemeal, as Per pointed out. You can do it slowly, gradually, by targeting, specifically targeting users that are applicable to modern and leaving the rest alone. So splitting your herd between legacy and modern, and then starting to develop processes, habits, creating stuff in Azure and managing them there. But you've got two worlds to manage. So when you begin the journey of migration, you want to call it that, transition I like to call it, although it is a migration, you're going to have to spin two wheels, and you're going to have two SOAs, because if you create anyone in Azure, operations want to have to access that user identity for whatever reasons. So they're going to have to go to AAD portal. Another user phones up. How do you discriminate that one from an AAD user and an AD user? Especially if they're all using the same name. Robert.Marshall@whatevercompany.com could be used in AAD or in AD. So you couldn't discriminate there. But so you have to have some processes at the back end for operations administration to be able to discern these users and to go to the right repository, because directory services is a repository. Yeah? We all understand what directory services is. Active Directory is directory services. If you roll back far enough in this industry, you get back down to Novell. Does anyone remember playing with Novell? Yeah, maybe just a handful of us, the youngsters in the room. Playing with Novell, pure directory services, supplanted by who? Microsoft. One of my first jobs in IT was to migrate from Novell to Windows NT 4. Back a long time ago. So which one currently means the most to you is subjective, really, and it depends on how far you're into your journey. If you're a small company, you're agile, you could pretty much, like Per said, you could pretty jump ship, come out of AD and go to AAD, and it wouldn't take you a year and a half. You could probably get it done in that time, probably sooner. Depends on how many moving parts are in there. So today, if I was to build out a new company, I get small scale companies. I don't go for big scale anymore. I get small companies, so that would be from 50 users to a few thousand, not huge organizations. And when I approach these customers, I'm purposely looking at orienting them to the modern. So the modern story for me is to zap your intranet. I don't care about your intranet anymore. I don't care about complexity on those links. I want it all going up. So if you've got an office in anywhere in the world of any scale, I want it going to the internet. And I want it to go up, across, and down. I don't want sideways. So in the modern world, your network is going to collapse right down. You're going to have links going up, maybe about 10, 15 years. Per would laugh now, but it's a fact, it's going to happen. Your network is being simplified. Right underneath you now, you're probably not noticing it. Maybe your network team are not doing anything about it today. Maybe they've just got too many wheels and they need to keep them turning. But my customers, I say to them to rip down your MPLS cloud, strip out anything you've got there and go for Meraki. Has anyone heard of Meraki from Cisco? Meraki is a wonderful piece of equipment that you can buy. It's a network router. I can configure that thing. It gets configured for me at Cisco. So before they ship that bit of kit, it'll all be primed to talk up into my Azure tenant. Or it'll talk to Cisco first and then be directed out. So I can basically have a config dropped onto that Meraki the moment it's got a plug. It's been plugged into the wall and given an uplink connection. It's alive. And it starts talking to the cloud. It won't be the Microsoft cloud, the Cisco piece. It'll get a config down, configures it. So I don't actually have to do anything to it. Now I have a local subnet that's got a Meraki that's uplinking straight to creating a VPN straight to my tenant. That's valuable. Previously, I'd have to do a lot of faffing around to get all that kind of stuff to work. Now I can just ship kit in. So if I've got an office in Argentina, I just go and buy something off the shelf from the vendor, get it shipped to the destination. Somebody takes care of racking it. I've got a customer doing this right now. They're in Argentina, that's why I mentioned it. They're there today. And they're ripping out all the infrastructure that's there, and they're uplinking straight to Azure. If I put that bit of kit in there, then that little island doesn't have a special little link going over to my corporate network. It's going straight up into Azure. So I've eased off some of my network requirements there and then. If you do that to all of your small sites, you're pretty much now going to be living in the cloud. Your corporate network is spanning your sites to the cloud. So you've got this hub and spoke kind of approach with the Merakis doing all the uplinking. So that's how I see most small companies. Let's ignore corporations that are just too big and too cumbersome to move and be agile. You know, they're special cases. People like vertical banks, you know, banks that like, I worked at BNP Paribas. That kind of company could never do that quickly and efficiently. It'd take them more than 1.5 years to even sort that kind of stuff out. They're stuck in their ways. It's going to take something bigger to shift them out. But anyone underneath that scale is prime for rethinking how their network works for them, cutting down costs. Putting a Meraki in there is half the price per annum of actually maintaining a link into your private MPLS cloud or however you want to do it. So the network underneath you is changing. And there's another thing that's changing, which we've already touched on, which is identity. So on top of thy network is a directory services that's doing all your authing. And on top of that is your app player, printers, anything you want in that app domain. But underneath the app domain is authentication, and that's what Active Directory is there for. We now have that being supplanted by Azure Active Directory. You can see that there's similarities, although Azure AD user is a wildly different entity than an AD user. And when an AD user is replicated via AD Connect up to Azure AD, it's a phony record. It's not a real record. So you've got these two identities, one impersonating the other so that you can have pass-through, single sign-on and such things. So when I come across small companies, I really try and invest a lot of time in convincing them to collapse everything. Think of the future, minimalizing, keeping it simple, don't overcomplicate things, and look to the future to save some money on how you're going to do things. So how far have we come? Well, does anyone remember throwing one of those in? Playing around with? Yeah, there's always one, isn't there? And then that, which is roughly when I came into the game, Windows NT, Advanced Server and all that other stuff was what the big boys were doing when I was working. I was a minion. And then when I finally got my spurs, I was with Windows NT Server. Then Active Directory's came along. That's been, I don't know how many years, it's been, 15 plus years of AED. And boy, has it grown, it's quite complicated. But funny enough, all that complexity seems to be shedding away. We're looking at modern now. And legacy, which is what Active Directory now unfortunately is really providing the services in a legacy environment. Now, if you're converting your legacy environment to become a modern environment, AD doesn't really have a place in there anymore. It's really literally just sitting there waiting for something to happen, which is to be displaced by AAD. And a few other things need to take place before we can actually truly do that for all companies. But right now, if I had a company of 100, 200 users, they're just starting out, there would be no Active Directory. I wouldn't put it in there. So we're at a point now where we can displace that for this, which probably means nothing to anybody, but that's actually, that's the Azure AD logo. I took it off the web. Probably isn't. It's probably something from Lidl. So how is all this identity shenanigans working? Well, we impersonate this object from here over here. So what we have is this thing in the middle. That's the icon for AD Connect, which everyone just puts in and fires and forgets. You know, once you've got it on your domain controller or on a domain joined server, it's basically replicating everything from Active Directory up to AAD, users, groups, device records, such things. What's coming down on the dotted lines is metadata. Now, anyone know what's coming down? Can anyone make a guess what's coming down from Azure AD to AD if you have AD Connect in place? It's a real, yeah, password hashes and passwords, I just call it, yeah. So, right back. So when I change my password up here for this object here, this needs to be updated. So all you've got is a little bit of basic stuff coming down, minimal amount of data coming down. Active Directory is your source of authority. This is where you're going to be doing all your administration today. So what's next? Well, all that needs to happen is for that to happen. Just switch the whole model around. Does that follow? Does that seem stupid, mad, insane? What's Robert talking about? I never thought about this. This is the first time I've thought about this. Anyone? Anyone? All right. Answer yes to all of that. So currently we're on Active Directory as the SOA. At some point we're going to do this flip. I know that this is being coded. There's a heavy investment in that middle center piece. That's your pivot piece for swinging. Yeah. So without that piece being modified, we can't make our transition. So what really needs to happen is for AD Connect to be doing it, the plumbing just reversed, so that all your AD objects are coming down AD. Now that puts AD in a prime position to be switched off. All you need to do to get ready for switching Active Directory off is to ease out any of the dependencies on Active Directory, which we'll come to in a minute. There's 3 things that you need to focus on to be able to ease that out of your environment. The more complicated your environment is, this story doesn't wash. You're going to probably have to wait because you're going to be the outlier. You're going to be one of the peripheral use cases, very special configurations and such things. And that functionality or capability won't be there in modern yet. So we just have to do a little bit of a waiting game. At that point, you might think, well, I'm going to start creating AAD users and I'm going to have this 2-world model. And I'm going to transition at some point, but I'm going to wait for them to code this. Now, as I say, AD Connect is getting some development love right now so that users, groups, and devices are going to come back down it. This isn't NDA. Microsoft don't say this, but this is what's going to happen. This is all my own personal opinion. And if you want to displace Active Directory, this is the logical way to do it. You just switch things around and your SOA becomes Azure AD. Now, why is it important to have, well, why do I keep on going about SOA? Well, anyone that wants to create new has to create it somewhere. So they're going to be creating it in Active Directory, or they're going to be creating it in Azure. When you're doing your transition, you're going to be creating it in 2 places, but ultimately your goal is to only create new, or author new in Azure AD, and let it all ripple back to that legacy thing called Active Directory before you can switch it off. Just make sure I haven't missed anything in my notes. Eventually, we're just going to be doing that, which is pretty much just blinking out AD and then running with Azure AD as your source of authority and the only identity directory services in your organization. And when you're at that point, you're primed for the whole modern stack. You know, everything can happen. There might be some legacy stuff you can't do anymore, but there are some workarounds for that as well, which I'm going to come on to in a moment. So before I get on with the blockers and problems, I put this together. It's just a bit of rambling, really. The new world is pure internet. I think we've all got that, haven't we? Your cloud. We know what cloud really means, don't we? We're all a bit thick behind the ear. We're not wet behind the ear. I mean, we know it just means a data center in a server in a data center somewhere other than in your proximity. So it's owned by Microsoft. And it's abstracted away to us as cloud. Take care, Jerry. Take care, Per. Thanks for coming, guys. So the future is that everything goes up to the internet. And as earlier started off by telling you about Meraki equipment. Meraki allows you to just go straight up with a VPN connection to your Azure tenant. It's all very, very smooth. That will allow you to pretty much internetify every part of your organization. and and start talking to your cloud services. So Microsoft have got this tendency in the period that I've been working around them of thinking that the world is truly flat and truly fast. So everything is very well connected. And that didn't really translate over to Europe and other parts of the world where network links were wet pieces of string or very expensive pieces of string and such like. So we always had problems with our pipes and the speed and width of them. Whereas over in America, most parts of America, they could just get big pipes and everything was just considered flat. Well, I'm saying the new world is flat, not their old world, simply because we don't have to do any linking from that site in Argentina to my office in London. I don't have to go to an ISP in Argentina and say, can I buy an expensive link, a dedicated virtual link, back to me, private, I own it, only my traffic's coming down it, I'm not sharing it with anyone. That's a lot of money. So what I do is I say to the ISP, I just want an internet connection. That's cheap as chips, and I just get it. I can get them, have anyone heard of shotgunning? Anyone heard of shotgunning? Multiple links for redundancy, so that if I have an ISP link failure, I've got another ISP I rely on, or I have a radio link to go up, so I have some redundancy. And that's the only thing you have to really be thinking about in the future for your networks is redundancy. So if your ISP link goes down because your eggs are up in one basket in the cloud, if you can't reach it, there's no productivity. You've got no on-prem infrastructure. So this is something that we're trying to, we're going to be getting used to, that idea. Whether or not we hold out and say, no, that's too much risk for me, my business could be down, could make you a holdout for a while, but you're going to eventually arrive and you're going to be purely just going straight up and make some redundant links and that'll be done. A lot of savings on the network. Pre-cloud was the internet poking out onto the internet. Now, Jerry talked about the CMG. Has anyone actually set up an IBCM, internet-based client management? Yeah, they're pretty straightforward. They're complex but straightforward. There's some prereqs that need to be done. The hardest part is that PKI. And then the worst part is actually exposing a system to the internet on the periphery of your DMZ. So the public's coming in and hitting it. So it's got to be hardened by your team, IIS, the OS. You're owning that piece. So you're basically getting a piece of your corporate network, projecting it out, and then securing it and hoping that no one can break it. It's a full OS sitting on the internet. Not the best of ways to do things, but it allowed us to be on the internet and then to be able to speak and continue speaking to an on-premise product, which was that cloudy thing that we're arriving at now with CMG and Intune. After that, we came across the hybrid scenario, which Per said that some customers are still running with. So you've got a hybrid mode of Intune and SCCM working. Now they need to be teased out, separated, because standalone is the de facto approach to this. And as you heard today, September this year, that's all expiring. And it's a hard expiration. It's not that you can carry on kicking that can down the road. You're going to be kicked out. You're going to have to do something about it. So after that, up came the client management gateway, which is a reinvention of the IBCM. But if instead of it being in your DMZ, it's in Microsoft's DMZ. Microsoft's managing it for you. And I think you already know the story with the CMG. It's self-maintaining. Microsoft are patching it. You've got to have two. If you don't, you're going to have an outage and such things. So that's made quite a big change to how we think about on-prem, to cloudify an on-prem solution that we have today. So SCCM has got co-management, which allows us to link into Intune. We have some Azure extension. We have Azure AD Discovery, Group Discovery, and a few other bits and pieces. So SCCM as this island of on-prem is starting to reach its feelers out into the cloud and becoming this cloudified solution. So yeah, does anyone agree with that? I agree with myself. It was a great observation. So SCCM, as far as I'm concerned, the half of SCCM that's retro legacy, I'm not interested anymore. So software distribution, all the hard moving parts I'm an expert in. I've just spent years doing it. I can talk it to the nth degree and kill it. But I'm just not interested in that anymore. I'm only interested in the cloud-enabled features of SCCM. And the reason is because I'm following that journey to its conclusion. It's going to take another decade. It's not going to be gone like tomorrow. But you're going to be seeing the on-prem pieces going like that and the cloudy pieces of SCCM becoming that. And when that gets too big, SCCM is gone. Who agrees with that? Good. Wise men in. Wise lady. Oh, that was a yawn. Right, okay. So Do you see what I mean about vision and this being a bit of a rubbishy, not deeply technical session? But it's just about raising awareness of what's coming. And I don't meet many people that say to me, "Here, Rob, do you know that Active Directory is going to be dead soon?" It's just not on anyone's radar, is it? It's the raft underneath us. And we've been towing along on that one for so many years now, we don't even think about it. It's like the air around us, isn't it? But it's going to be pulled out from underneath us at some point. Not brutally, but you are going to be nudged into it. You're not going to be able to live in legacy land for very much longer. Go on. Grab him a mic, sorry.
Identity management. What people don't realise, stealthily, is that more and more customers have been consuming SaaS services.
Yeah, yeah.
And we say Active Directory is the source of our truth. It's not really, because when a user leaves the organisation and you disable their AD account, they've still got access to all these SaaS services. So actually, stealthily, people are being moved towards a cloud-based identity management system because you're accessing a lot of SaaS services. And a lot of these SaaS services are going to be integrated into Azure Active Directory. So when you disable their account in Azure Active Directory, they won't get access to Salesforce.com or a CRM system or anything else. So people now, currently, they've got on-premises Active Directory, but I can assure you they've got access to other applications hosted by other partners, other vendors. So therefore, they need to move away from on-premises identity management to cloud-based management.
It's a very good point. Thanks for bringing it up. Yeah, in line with what's going on here. So following on, now we have standalone for SCCM and Intune. They've been completely separated out. You can work both of them in tandem now. The story I know quite well, and there were points where I was going to Redmond and I was sitting there and I was shaking. I heard the PG saying to me, "Ring, ring the death bell for SCCM, it's going to be dead next year. Here's Intune and we're taking over." And then when I looked in the Intune bag, I found out it was pretty much empty. And that there wasn't really anything there day one, and it was all like bling and bluster, right? And we had a bit of a fight, and this is not being recorded, is it? We had some to-in and fro-in, and there was competitiveness between the two tribes in the same group, okay? Because Intune was separate first, brought in under DJammer, so they're both living in the same tent, but they're in two different worlds, and they were quite adversarial. And in fact, without spilling too many beans, the Intune team was interns and a brand new swathe of people coming in, all fresh. Some of them established, but majority were fresh, new ideas. A lot of them hadn't actually done the old ideas yet, so they didn't realize that their new ideas were conflicting or pushing away from how we do things. I'll give you a good example. Can anyone give me a good example of a failing of Intune until recently? Yeah, bang on the money, you get the prize. So how can you believe that? Now, generally, this is an enterprise-grade product and it can't deliver a Win32 app. It was just, that just was a killer in the enterprise. And I was heavily banging the drum when going to Redmond saying this is ridiculous. I got told to shut up at one point because I was going on too much about it. You know, we know this, Rob, but we're not going to do anything about it. And then they did, and they're trying to kill it at the moment, aren't they? You know, we've got Win32, we call it Win32, but your 64-bit app's going through there. Windows 32-bit, Win32. Anyway, so we've got these two separated products. They both are working in tandem now, and they're sharing, and they're being friends. There's no adversarial attitude between them, no hostility, no taking over. They both, now Intune's established itself. It's growing its tool set out. How much time do I have? A few more minutes? So Intune is actually now friendly and compatible with SCCM rather than trying to dominate and take ownership of all of its stack. And they're living together quite nicely and growing. And as Per said, there's never been as big an investment in SCCM as there is today. We see that through the servicing model, don't we? Huge amount of stuff coming out the TP. And then it hits current branch. We never saw that. In my days when we were kicking around Win24, then AD came around, SMS 2003 and all the other stuff up thereafter, Config Manager 2007. It was changes over years, wasn't it? And then when they came, they were kind of like an angle, because you know they had to get them in. They hadn't really real welded them, thought them through. So the next iteration aligned them up again. And we saw that with some of the features coming in, because the development time was so long. By the time they got to the end of it, things had changed around us. And then out comes a product that doesn't get iterated for several more years. So the servicing model has really made that quite a tight spin now. We're getting quite a lot of stuff coming out, or iteration out of SCCM. And Intune's the same now. Intune has really got underway, hasn't it? It's really kicked its heels in, and it's developing itself, maturing strongly now. It's becoming a candidate for replacement, or a piece that's fundamental to the replacement of on-prem. Without Intune, we couldn't go to the cloud-only environment. We would have to keep that on-prem SCCM, which then requires Active Directory, because we know that an SCCM site server needs to be domain joined. So you've got these two products working quite nicely now. You've seen the co-management from these two guys. It was very impressive. There's more to come. It's a bit slim on the feature set, I'm afraid, but that's first cuts, isn't it? Well, about a third cut, part way in now. But that's going to expand out as they get their confidence and the quality up. So where's the workload going to end up? It seems to me that all roads lead to Rome, which is the cloud. So what kind of things do we have that are going to block us from going there? Well, I didn't put any of the clicks in there, so I steal my own thunder, and you can read it all out while I talk. But we've got users going from AAD. We've got devices coming down. We've got groups covered. Or at least we can create users, devices, and groups in Azure AD. So that's fine. That's a like for like. Most of our work in on-prem is creating those three, isn't it? Any more? Can anyone think of anything else that's like fundamental to our
There's an SCCM guy who blogs for the industry that he's in oil rigs. So a lot of his sites are middle of nowhere. They have no internet, so everything's offline.
Right.
So he has to think differently.
Yeah, now that's a very unique scenario. How do you cover offline? Courier sender? That's a CCM joke. Only the young ones here will laugh at that. But pigeons, USB keys. But how would you actually manage something that's offline? How would you manage that? Oh, you're talking about on-prem cloud. Yeah, you're talking about on-prem cloud. Isn't that being collapsed down now? That was...
No, Azure Stack's big bucks, and you need big bucks as well to buy it.
Yeah. Should we talk about that, or just exclude it as something that's really...
Yeah,
you've got the money, it's on the table. If you haven't, let's forget about it. A lot of money, but it's a valid point. It's a good one, and it's good feedback. So those three at the front there, that's pretty much AD, AAD, that's fine. The next one is the real problem, is printers. Printers. It's always been a bane of everybody's life. I remember when I was younger, reacting rapidly because our servers were blue screening. Our print servers were blue screening. This is 1980s, late 80s. We couldn't understand why. It turned out that some of the VIP directors were bashing their gold card and just buying HP printers and then installing it on their machine. And there was a bug with the print spooler that was installed, the print driver that was installed. It wasn't a print driver. It was something to do with print service that was installed, so it could be a local printer. But somehow they managed to get, then connect to a printer on the network. How did this work? I can't remember. But somehow it ended up with the driver on the local device causing a blue screen on the print server. And we were wondering why. So how do you figure that one out? Just like blue screens. And then it stops blue screening, and then it just blue screens. And we found out it was just a dodgy HP stuff. I haven't really got any more anecdotal stories other than that on the print side, other than going through, was it PGAL? I can't remember, PostScript, print drivers, PCL, wasn't it? PCL? Yeah, that kind of stuff. And then my story finishes. Print then, to me, becomes Control-P, Enter, and the paper comes out. All of that requires on-prem infrastructure, Active Directory, print queues, print servers. So that's all traditional on-prem stuff. And in any environment today, you're going to have a printer in the corner of the room that people just attach to and print, yeah? But in the future, if you're just going upwards and you haven't got any infrastructure on-prem, then how do you print to that printer? So we need a little bit more of a cool solution for that. So is cloud printing ready? Has anyone done any cloud printing? Cool. What's your feedback on that? Just very 30 seconds. What's your...
Well, we use a product called Printex.
Yeah, that's in my deck in a moment. It's going to come up with...
Because I do a lot of Citrix work, so printing is a bane of our lives. So yeah, Printex works very well. Some people use Google Print as well,
sure.
Rightly or wrongly, but yeah.
There's another one I've got here.
Print Logic is another one which I've used.
Yeah.
Printex is one we use a lot.
There's actually a service from Azure, Cloud Print Service. There are some caveats to it, some conditions. You can run it almost pure cloud and have no on-prem dependency, but some of the configurations require you to have a print server, and that then needs to be AD joined, which means you can't kick AD out, instead you're kicking the can down the road. So cloud printing can lock you in and be a problem. And if you've got a vast amount of print queues or print devices in your environment, you will then have to look at what those devices are, whether or not they can be made cloud ready, and such things. So printing is a bit of a problem, and it needs to be thought out. You can jury rig it, you can get it to work, you can dispose of all your Active Directory and have a print queue in the internet. There's ways to do that. In the deck, there are lots of notes on how to do it. Print IX it's called. There's another one called IPP, Internet Printing. I don't know what IPP means, I'm afraid. Threw it at me. But there are solutions for printing, but that's one of our blockers. And I'm not here today to unblock these things, I'm just here to highlight what they are. Applications, there's another blocker. Can anyone tell me what it would be about applications that blocks us from kicking AD out? Sounds like you've done all of the stuff that I'm doing in this deck. Is another visionary. Exactly, yeah, he's bang on the money. Again, so you're going to have like 100 apps, 2 or 3 of them are going to be special, and they're going to require, they make calls to LDAP calls to an Active Directory, they expect to receive a response. If you've killed your AD, then that's going to be problematic. So there's actually a workaround for that. Do you know it? Okay, well we can actually, I'm running out of battery. We can actually jury rig this. So there's a thing called Azure Active Directory Domain Services. I can switch that on in Azure, and it doesn't create a member server, a Windows AED. It's abstracted away from me, and I can make LDAP calls straight into it and speak to AAD. So my LDAP or my problem applications, LOB, line of business problem applications, if I divine out the ones that are compatible and not compatible, I can now deal with a fair proportion of the amount of apps that would cause me, would be blockers. I can take them off the list now. I can say, okay, I'll go up into Azure, I'll put that moving piece in place, and now I'll configure some configuration files for the app, and it'll make an LDAP to the internet to Azure. So I can get around print problem, and I can get around most of the application problems. Some of the key blockers. I've got literally just 2 or 3 minutes and then we wrap up. Go on.
Microsoft 365, we've got some legacy apps. Microsoft have helped to migrate to like Windows 10 on Office 365.
Yeah.
And it's on Mechanics, Microsoft Mechanics.
Yeah. Brad mentioned this only the other day in Twitter, and I'm trying to bring it back now, but he's offering a deal to throw in this package. Do you remember what it is? But he'll basically ship a team in or bring you to the team.
Desktop App Assure, is it?
Yeah. So they'll actually do that extra yard for you. There'll be a bit of pain behind that because you're engaging with Microsoft. There'll be expectations. Are you doing it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they can enable you and get those and shimmy them however and make them work. Or if they don't work, go back to the vendor. Now, what should vendors be doing? They shouldn't be writing legacy code anymore. They should be looking at their products and going, hold on, we're in the modern world now. I need to be going that way, not that way. So you can go back to the vendor and say, hey, have you got this covered? If you haven't, have you got this on your timeline? If you haven't, what's your competitor's name? If you can do that, some apps are very specific and you can't just shift to another one. In a perfect world, you could. So another blocker would be cloud feature maturity. So what I'm doing on-prem, can I do it tomorrow in modern, in the cloud? And for most of us, we can. There's going to be some stuff that we can't. And I haven't covered off anything complex in this, in my world that I'm describing here. Very complex configurations, probably not going to be as easy to shimmy up into the cloud as if you were a small, agile little company with fewer moving parts. So that's the end of my demo because I haven't plugged in my computer. And there was a last slide that I wanted to show you. So I will wake it up. We're going to hit Q&A now. I've got a couple more minutes. Let's bring the Q&A and I'll bring this back up in just a moment. So what do you think about that vision? Is that off? Is that kind of hitting the mark where you think it should be? Have I missed stuff? Because I want to develop this deck and I want to put it online and do a Skype for Business call for the world, invite people down. Go on.
I have one consideration and stuff like that is end users, user experience.
I never think of users, and they just have to toe the line.
Yeah, they're a kind of necessary pain, aren't they, really?
Yeah, they are. I always say we should sack them. Get rid of them. It's the first thing I say when they give me a phone call and say, I've got problems. I say,
Yeah, it's
got
just
a
a
P45
consideration.
on your desk.
Yeah, whilst
But
that's
no,
coming up.
they're the meat and potatoes of everything, so we've got to make sure that they're okay. The user experience. Does anyone remember actually implementing Windows 95 in their organisation? Did you experience the document authorers, the people that had to set up all the new guides and things like that? Did that happen? Yeah, I was working at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, and there was a whole team set aside to re-engineer everything, documentation, guides, and all that kind of stuff, and it was like bringing in a whole new world. So that's what I see as happening today. I don't think we can do such a smooth transition between old and new world. We can keep it as seamless as possible, but there's going to be new things showing to them, new ways of doing things.
Yeah, trying to drive your users, user adoption to do self-serve of applications, maybe do self-service password
And
reset
that's
is a
where
big
the
one.
education comes into it. They're actually going to need guides, PDFs, web wikis, and all that kind of stuff. And there needs to be an internal process to get those users looking at that so that they're familiar. Otherwise, what happens, and we noticed this when they put out Windows 95, was the volume of calls coming in was like that, because people weren't reading, and it's all new, and literally there's a phone number. It's easier just to say, hi, I've got a problem, and then we would work them through. So we knew on the front line that, on the help desk, which was strapped to the side of the desktop team that I was in, that we were going to amp out their queue, and it was going to slowly drain down, slowly trickle down, but we were going to have to put a lot of energy in. It's exactly the same as today. I think that doing the transition to model is the same paradigm shift or same significant changes happened 15, 20 years ago. Windows 95, 20 years ago. Go on.
Assignment for the last 2 weeks, but user reports problem with Excel. They're on 365. Open question, what training have you done? None. User looks, that's my spreadsheet. Actually right click and it's at XLS, which kills new version of Excel. Showed a few little tricks, this, that, the other. Next minute, bam, everything fine. But that's like 400 people in finance impacted.
Yeah, exactly.
But just turning negative to positive.
And how's it working out? They actually just went through the pain? And
finance people are always finance people in a nice way.
Yeah.
My dad's an accountant, but
What we are is we're users as well. We think of ourselves as engineers, but when you sit down in front of your keyboard, if I was to start moving things around, if I was to now change that screen to that screen, that dialogue changed and the text was dropped around, you would feel the same feeling that users get when they sit down and it's not the norm, it's not the same. And there's a lot of psychology involved in here. You can't start kicking things and shaking it all around and say, you 1,000 people are just going to deal with it and eat it up. People are people. Some people are, like from people that go to the autism spectrum all the way down to people with OCD levels like me. If things change, it's like change. Like, it's disruption.
We just said to them, like, if they're too busy, that's fine, but everyone's got a few minutes. So, like, Microsoft Mechanics is a link to the Office 365 page, a 1-minute video clip to a link to a PDF to a step-by-step guide. And I let them, some people learn by doing, by video, by step-by-step guide.
Exactly.
But then, basically, 15 minutes a week, pick Word this week, Outlook next week, over a month, an hour, over a year, 12 hours.
So this is really good feedback for everybody in the room, because that's actually stuff that you can implement. When you do your little piecemeal migrations, it's exactly that kind of thinking that needs to take place. So takeaways. Your company has to be agile enough to be able to go for this model. If it's not agile enough, then you're going to have real problems doing your shift. It's not only the technology, it's the politics as well involved here. There's two things going on. So inside the organisation, you're going to have people with fiefdoms and ideas that they're going to go this way, that way. You've got to bring all that together and coalesce it together. But smaller the company, the better it is. Many moving parts, complexity, forget it. On-prem overmatches cloud. We've got to wait for the balance to shift. So that's just a matter of time. Cloud, the co-management piece is where all that's going to make the big difference for us. No one likes a clever clogs, so don't flash this knowledge around the water cooler. That was just a joke at the end, because now I've empowered you with this vision. Don't know if I actually have, but I thought it was a fun subject to cover off. So this is what's going to happen when I turn off my last domain controller. So strap in and get ready for it. And if you ever do switch off Active Directory. If you get it down to the last DC, remember that you're one of a few. You're special. If you get it in before others, yeah, that's trophy material. I turned off Active Directory. Name one, who's in here has turned off AD? Who's going to be the first? If you do, please use this tag. So, I hope that this was of value. I'm sorry it wasn't a highly technical one. I'm used to putting on a trench session where I call it trench, one specific feature, like the CMG from Jerry earlier. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this. I've put that deck together hastily. I hope it conveyed a decent enough message and that it was an entertaining session for you. And thanks for listening, and especially for the feedback. Thanks.